Nokia is back, but they chose a pretty confusing way to return, a mid-range smartphone that is only available in China. Now, if that sounds like a strange idea to you, then join me as I try to wrap my head around this launch in the 11th episode of the Story Behind series. And this time around, it will be a pretty short one because we don't have a lot of info to work with. There is no way around it. The Nokia N6 isn't what fans expected to see. The device looks pretty enough in my opinion, but there's no innovative new feature or design, no global availability, nothing. It's a simple mid-range smartphone. So, if there are no features to talk about, let's see whether it makes sense as a business decision. First, the smartphone is exclusive to JD.com for 1,699 yuan. JD is China's #1 e-commerce platform for premium stuff, especially electronics, and since people in China generally don't buy phones from carriers, this kind of makes sense. I decided to look up the competition and make a comparison based purely on the few specs that we know so far. The top 3 smartphone sellers in China right now are Oppo, Vivo and Huawei. Their phones which come the closest in price are the Oppo A57 for 1,599 yuan, the Vivo Y67 for 1,798 yuan, which like any Vivo phone looks like any Oppo phone, which in turn looks like any recent iPhone. And last but not least, the Huawei G9 Plus for 1,689 yuan, all within 100 yuan from the Nokia. Let's start with the bad news. The Nokia has the weakest CPU of the bunch, with a Snapdragon 430, while the Huawei manages to have a much nicer Snapdragon 625 for about the same price. Not a good start at all, but at least that's all the bad news there is. The Nokia is actually the only phone on this list that has both 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of storage at the same time, and the 5.5-inch 1080p screen also puts it on top of this list together with the Huawei, though I'm not sure how well the weak CPU would handle that kind of resolution. In terms of battery, the Nokia's 3000 mAh unit puts it right in the middle, with the Huawei once again taking the crown. And while we all know megapixels don't mean much, it's my only way of comparing cameras, so here we go. With 16 on the back and 8 on the front, the Nokia looks about as promising as any other smartphone on this list, only the slightly more expensive Vivo seems to have a small lead in the selfie front. The Nokia is also the only phone on this list that comes with Android 7.0 out of the box, though Chinese consumers have repeatedly demonstrated that they just couldn't care less about Android versions in general. Anyway, all phones have fingerprint readers and some sort of premium metal construction as well. Overall then, the Nokia 6 easily goes head to head with these competitors on all key specs except for the really confusing processor choice. Smartphone makers are in fact choosing the wrong kind of processor so often that I decided to dedicate my next video to this mystery. I'll put that up right here once I'm done with it, and until then, subscribe if you don't want to miss it. Anyway, my conclusion would be that the Nokia 6 is overall competitively priced in spec for the market that it is in. Of course, there are much more aggressively priced phones from companies like Xiaomi and Meitu, but Oppo and the rest have proven that this sort of pricing can work with the right kind of marketing. And while that might be the case, I still find this return incredibly strange. Nokia's return to the smartphone business was one of the most anticipated tech happenings ever. I think it could have been more hyped than Google launching the Pixel or Microsoft launching the Surface line. And yet, Nokia chose to go as quiet as possible. The phone itself is okay, but incredibly boring, and there was no grand event, nothing, just a video and a press release. I can understand that they want to limit themselves to a single market and a single reseller for the launch. After all, it lets them focus, which is something that every new company desperately needs. And it makes JD a very eager ally who will take over much of the promotion for themselves. But both the phone and the launch were so low-key that it feels like HMD, the company that is in charge of this launch, was wasting a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity of the whole tech world standing on their toes, paying attention to the company. Just imagine all the free press Nokia would have gotten from launching something big. Instead, they quietly launched a mid-ranger in a busy Chinese mid-range market. Does it have the chance to succeed? Sure, but at this price, they'll need all-out gigantic advertisements to drown out all the Oppo, Vivo and Huawei ads that all of China is flooded with. And that makes the fact that this launch was so quiet even more strange. But hey, maybe they know something that I don't. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about the return of Nokia. Subscribe to the channel if you would like to see more investigative tech videos from the Story Behind series, and tweet at TechAltar with the hashtag #TipTA if you want to give me any suggestions on future videos. I think that was everything, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.